Hey guys, I decided today was a good time to make a video. This is a concept that I discussed with Mark and Joe a bit, but I kind of want to go over it in a more broad way and also just have something on paper and have a video so you can watch it anytime in case you guys found it useful. I got Ted behind me, so Ted's in on the video as well. He's hanging out. It is Wednesday night. Notice I had to look at the date to make sure I got the day right. But I just came off a session at Parks yesterday in which I think I played really well. I did very well, which is always nice. I cashed out for, I think I profited like $11,500 or something like that. So it's definitely a nice outcome. Point is not to brag, but I think I'm in I think I played very well yesterday. I think I played very precise. I actually think it's probably the best session I've ever had in terms of how my decision making was. I felt both like I was making the correct decisions, but also like I was making them quickly, and I was being very precise with my play, and I was really happy with how I played. And I thought coming off of that session, it would be a good time to make a video and go over some mental aspects of the game that I think a lot about. So let me just make sure I'm good to go here. I actually already made this video once and realized that I had the sound settings screwed up, so there was an echo on it. So this is video number 2. Anyway, who cares? So I'm going to talk about a concept called Inchworm, and basically, I want you to think about your game. So in this context, player being you, as having 5 outcomes: playing horrible, being a little bit off or feeling a little bit off, your, let's say, standard session, you played very well, and you played extremely precise. So outcomes meaning how well you played relative to your game. And when I say precise, the reason I use that word and not just, played extremely well is because I think precise captures what we're aiming for. So precise means getting the most money and making the right bets in the right folds at every, aspect of the session. Or not every, but just doing it very often. So for example, like if you have a spot on the river where you know that you're going to get called if you value bet and you want to get called, you have a value hand, but you could make more money by check raising, even if it's a bit of a strange play, you think it's higher EV, that might be the more precise play. So it's not just about playing well where it's like, oh yeah, I made $300 in this river. It's like, well, I actually check raised and I think that my EV was much higher and I ended up making a lot more money, which is great. Or I should have made a lot more money. He just happened to fold a hand he shouldn't fold, or maybe check a hand he shouldn't check, whatever. But the point is, I want you to think about precision with your play. The same is true if there's a $10 pot and you bet $2 as a bluff and get everyone to fold, and you're balancing that bluff well. That's a very precise play. So it's not just enough to say I played well. Who knows what that means? But I want you to think precision with each of your decisions. And it's worth pointing out that this 1 through 5 chart would be different, with, for example, the worst player on earth, someone that's never played before. For them, playing horrible would be like, I didn't know what my hand was, whereas played extremely precise might be like, I figured out that I had a pair, whatever. And then someone like, some wizard like OTB Red Baron or Sauce or whatever, for them playing horrible is going to be very different from someone like me, for example. So I don't know where I am on the spectrum, but basically this is going to be different for each person, and yours is going to grow as you get better, and that's kind of what Inchworm is all about. So I'll get to that in a second. And then the second thing is your game outcomes, and this is how you actually did in the session in terms of, wins and losses. So you get absolutely destroyed would be 1, lost a lot, even-ish, had a solid winning session, and crushed the game. So let's think of this as 2 scales from 1 to 5. And it depends on the game you play, obviously. So getting absolutely destroyed in 1-2 no limit is very different from getting absolutely destroyed in 10-25. If you get destroyed in 1-2 no limit, you might lose, I don't know, $800, maybe $1,000, maybe 2 buy-ins. Or I guess $500 buy-in is 1-3 no limit. So let's say 1-3 no limit, since you guys play a lot of that. that would be potentially $500 to, you know, 1,000 would be getting crushed or would be getting destroyed. 1025 it might be like 10 to 15,000. Anyway, you get the point. So this is different, and then again, depending on the game, crushing the game is very different. I would say for me, I play mostly 10-10 no limit. It's the game that I think I'm best at least right now. For me, getting absolutely destroyed at 10-10 no limit is probably a $7,000 loss, like just over 2 buy-ins. That's probably as bad as I think I'm ever going to do. Obviously, there's a scenario probably possible where I just get hit with a cold deck and could lose more, but I would say somewhere around 7,000. Crushing the game is probably, I'd say, right like yesterday, probably plus 11, 12. I could see a scenario where if you played a long enough session, you know, maybe 15 in profit, but anyway. And I would, you know, even-ish, I don't have to explain that, obviously. I would say losing a lot is somewhere around, let's call it 1 buy-in, 3,000, maybe a buy-in and a half, so maybe like 4,500. And same with had a solid winning session. I would consider this anywhere from winning 2,000 to, you know, maybe 7,000. Anyway, the first thing I want to point out is that, and it's really important that you understand this because it should shape the way you think. These are not always directly correlated. So like, just because you played horrible doesn't mean you're going to get absolutely destroyed. Just because you played average doesn't mean you're going to go even, and just because you play extremely precise does not mean you're going to crush the game. So, I mean, we've all seen the guy who shows up, plays like total shit, has no idea what he's doing, and crushes the game and walks away with $4,000. I've certainly had sessions where I thought I played very well. I thought I played precise, and I either got crushed or, you know, lost or whatever. That's going to happen. So once you start thinking of these as separate scales, and that's why I think it's helpful to have it visual, it's going to help release you from stressing so much about this, because this is what everyone worries about, but actually it's not as important as this. And I was saying this to you guys on the text thread the other day, but basically the reason I always ask you is how did you play rather than how did you do, is because those are two very different things. You can't control this, but you can control this. So I want you to separate those two things, and I want you to concentrate on this. Like, obviously, this is important because we want to make money, but this is what we actually want to concentrate on, this scale of 1 through 5, and this will come. We're going to have a lot of these if we improve our play. So the concept of Inchworm, and this is something from I actually listened to it as an audiobook, but the book is The Mental Game of Poker by, I don't know this guy, but a bunch of stuff here. I don't think he's a poker player, I just think he's a poker coach, because he's the mental side. But it was a good audiobook. I would recommend it. I think this was probably the most important concept, so you're probably getting the best part of it, but if you want to kind of dive in more, I would recommend that you check that out. The concept of Inchworm is basically that, at least as I interpreted it, and this is how it's been years now since I listened to it, so I don't want to speak for Jared. This is kind of my take now on the way I think about this moving forward. I just happen to use the same word. But basically, when we think about improvement, we have a tendency to only concentrate on getting better at something either we already do well or increasing our capacity to do really well. Another way of wording that is we tend to concentrate on like, well, how do I win more money? And that's what we spend a lot of time thinking about. An example of this, and I listened to actually it was a Malcolm Gladwell podcast where they talked about this, but basically when you ask, I think they pulled some soccer owners or some GMs or whatever in the EPL, and basically they said like, well, the way to get better, the way to win is to sign someone like, you know, Ronaldo or Messi or whatever, you know, some huge star. And actually, when people did a kind of a deep dive into the ways to improve your club, the best way to do it would be to take whatever your weakest link is, so like a defender or whatever, some random player on the team, and just replace that. with an average player. Another example of this is in baseball. You hear a lot about wins above replacement now, WAR. And one of the ways that teams get better is not just signing Mike Trout. It's taking the guy that was awful, like the backup catcher who played the whole year, and just replacing that with a standard normal catcher who's just average. So the idea here to understand is that one of the easiest ways to improve our game is not by learning how to get much better. It's by learning how to not be as bad as we are at certain things, or not play as bad as we do certain days. So the idea of the inchworm is to take this and inch forward, to scoot this forward, and in turn we're going to scoot the whole chart up. So think of everything as moving up. Another way of saying this is, instead of concentrating on crushing the game more, I want you to concentrate on getting absolutely destroyed a little bit less, because it's going to be much easier to improve than this. And since, well, we'll get into that point in a sec, actually. Again, the idea is, if your 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 is a certain level of play, the way to improve it all, I mean, there's a couple ways, but the one I want you to concentrate on is improving, getting better on our worst day, or even if you feel a little bit off, improving it a tiny bit. So don't worry about this. If we're playing extremely precise, we're going to make money anyway. You don't need to get a little bit better at being sick. You don't need to get a little bit better at crushing the game. I want you to concentrate on your bad days. So that's a conceptual idea, obviously. That's something floating in space. What the hell does that mean? Let's get practical with it a little bit. So these are some concepts that I consider really important. I think about this a lot. I think if you were to ask people who have played with me a good amount, or who, even if they haven't played with me a good amount, I think they would tell you that I don't know that I'm one of the best players, but I do know that I'm as good as anyone I've met at having the right mental mindset at the table. And that means a lot of things, not just Inchworm, but it means having the right demeanor. It means treating people with respect. It means not berating players when they misplay a hand, which is totally ridiculous, but that's a discussion for another day. But what I want to concentrate on today is these 4 things that I wrote down that I think are extremely important. Actually, I'll go as far as to say I think these 4 concepts are more important than anything you're going to learn about how to get better at poker. Obviously, if you're not a winning player, like, that needs to be improved. But this stuff is so much more important in the long run. It's not hard to... I shouldn't say it's not hard. You can get better at poker by studying. This stuff you need to work on and really take in. It's so important. That's a long-winded way of saying this stuff matters. So, first concept. I always hear players say, even winning players, even really solid winning players, this notion of getting even. Let me change the wording, because what I had written was not true. Should not be a concept. Or I'll change this to us. This notion of getting even. So I want you to think about poker as a year-long or even lifelong session where you continue to improve, you continue to get it better, but really the only thing that matters is making good decisions. So when you're at the casino and you immediately start losing, or you lose over 5 hours, whatever, 200, or you're down 5,000, or who knows, there's this notion of getting even where it's like, oh, if I could just get even, then I can leave. Like, you always hear people say this. Or, man, like, I decided to chase a flush draw because I was trying to get even. I hear that all the time. I have no idea why people think this way. I don't get it at all, but it's a thing. So I propose to you, you don't ever want to worry about getting even. All you want to concentrate on, is making good decisions. Whether or not you leave the casino that day having won or lost is not particularly relevant to anything, to be honest. Obviously, it's great to win, but the notion of, like, getting your money back and then you can go home, that doesn't make any sense. All you want to do is just concentrate on making good decisions. And the reason for this is because if you start thinking about getting even, it's going to affect the way you play. So now all of a sudden, like I said, you're chasing a flush draw, or you can't move down in stakes to a better game because you're down 4,000. So you're like, well, I can't play 2-5 now because I'm down 4K. How am I going to make 4K back? Doesn't matter. You don't need to make 4K back. I actually wish there was a way that we could all mentally wipe the slate clean of what had happened that day, especially when we lose. Sometimes it's a benefit if you're winning, but I wish I could literally, when talking to you guys, say, hey, how are you doing? And you're like, I actually don't even know. I'm just trying to make good decisions. I know that's, hyperbolic and kind of ridiculous, but that's how I want you to be thinking about it. I just want you to make good decisions. That's it. Do not worry about this notion of getting even. The counterpoint is, I don't ever want to hear you say, like, I'm booking a win, meaning I'm up a little bit. I'm either going to stop playing or affect my decision making because I'm winning right now. I see this all the time. I see people where either A, they just want to book a win. They're like, oh, I'm winning, I want to leave. If you're a recreational player or whatever, that's fine. That's probably a good decision because you're probably losing in the game. But if you have desires to be a pro or you want to make money at this game, if the game's good, you need to play, or you should be playing, and you want to win as much as possible and make the best decisions. Booking a win should never cross your mind. Again, it does not matter whether you won or lost that day. In the long run, it is not a big deal. Another thing I see on this same idea of booking a win is, in a more micro example, I'll see people win a big pot and then suddenly have a big stack, and it affects the way they're playing. So either they're playing much tighter or they're playing much looser, and all of a sudden their game has completely changed. If you feel like you're super locked in and you're just like seeing everything perfectly and making really good decisions, I'm totally okay with you playing looser. That's fine. But you shouldn't be playing looser just because you have more chips in front of you. That's not a justification. In a tournament, it might be because you can bully people, but in a cash game, I mean, it's not like having an insane number of chips somehow helps you get someone. I guess it could hypothetically get someone to fold if they're playing scared. Fair enough. And if you think that's a justification, then do it. But just the notion of you being up money and therefore affecting your game just in a vacuum, that should not happen. Another thing I see a lot is people will win a big pot and then feel like they can just either give money back somehow to the person that they won against, like in a couple of small pots, or take a couple of hands off. So it's like they won a big one, and then the next hand it's like, oh, well, I don't need to 3-bet. I just won a big pot, which is a really weird thing. I don't know why people play this way, but again, I want you to I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I want you to making good decisions. I don't want these other things to affect your decision making. And to be clear, when I say that, I'm not saying like the players you're playing against should affect your decision making. How other people are doing should affect your decision making. All the decision making, just not how you're doing and not, how you're running or anything like that. Okay. I think I've said enough on that. Got a little long-winded there. This is going to sound simplistic, but don't tilt. That's one way to improve your inchworm. So this notion of tilt is, it's been around as long as poker, and it's one of those things that even really good players who are like beating 10-25 no limit or extremely solid, guys whose game I really respect even, they have this idea in their head that it's okay to tilt. It's almost like it's justified and it's fine. It's just part of the game. I don't know. Again, I don't understand how people are okay with this, but you should never be tilting at the table. It's easy to say that. It's harder to do when you lose a big pot or when you make a decision that's wrong or you get bluffed or whatever. It's very easy to have, your heart drop, and then you go into that mode where it's just like, fuck, I am affected. I need to win a big pot. I need to get it back. That's how your mind starts thinking. Just stop. Just release that thought. Don't worry about it. Just make good decisions. I'm not trying to sound like, a therapist or a guru or whatever. And I get it's easier said than done. But basically, like, I can't stress enough how important it is not to tilt. So I'm going to give you a way of being honest with yourself. A trick that I've used for years is if I think I'm in danger of being off my game or tilting, which is kind of the same thing, I mentally ask myself, am I capable of making a big fold? And the reason I do that is because when you're tilting, the last thing you want to do is fold. Because it's just not, you're already down a lot of money and now you're folding. That's just not how your mind thinks. Your mind thinks like, all right, I'm down a lot of money. I need to just call until I get it back, right? But that should not be it. That's a horrible outlook. That's the outlook of a weekend warrior, not, what we want to be, which is solid winning pros. So a quick way of doing it, I shouldn't say quick, but I think a precise way of reading your mental ability is to ask yourself, am I capable of making a big fold? It's worth pointing out, by the way, that I hate folding, so sometimes the answer is no, even when I'm not on tilt, but if you can mentally... Oh, shit. Yo, hold on, Ann, I'm making a video. That just scared me so bad. What's up? Ann's talking to me on our home camera. I'm making a video, Ann. Can we chat in a sec?
I just want you to order dinner.
Okay, where do you want to eat? Okay, I'll order something. Alright, so, sorry guys. I could have just paused it, but man, that scared me. Okay. Am I capable of making a big fold? That's what I ask myself. And I can say 100% that sometimes the answer is no. And when the answer is no, there's a couple of ways to approach it. Get up, take a lap, go have a beer, take the edge off, walk around the casino, maybe go meditate. I've done that a couple times. Drink a lot of water, just whatever you need to do to get your mind right. And sometimes, frankly, for me, it's just I'm not going to be able to get back to a mental place where I think I'm going to be winning, and I just go home. I don't like doing that, obviously, because I need to play a lot of hours. That's how we maximize our profit. But sometimes I just say to myself, I'm not playing well. I'm not making good decisions. I'm here, and I'm not improving my inchworm, so I need to call it a day. And if you get to that point, so be it. I would rather have you just tell me I didn't have it, I was playing like shit, I felt like I was on tilt, and I didn't think I was capable of making a big fold, and therefore I just left. And that happens. It happens to the best of us. It's much better off than just, starting to lose and losing the rest. Oh, by the way, one thing I forgot to add, I meant to mention this, sorry. So, I'll finish my thought on this, on not tilting. One other thing is, a good way of not tilting is, instead of worrying about, again, getting even, worry about battling to lose the absolute minimum that day. Meaning, I'm already down 4,000, but it's because either I haven't played sharp or variance has affected me, meaning like I've lost hands I was supposed to win, or whatever, any reason, who cares why you're down. You need to tell yourself, but I'm going to concentrate now on battling to lose the minimum, meaning like maybe I'm supposed to lose 6,000 today based on the cards, but I'm going to battle to lose 5,000. And again, that's that inchworm idea, or actually it's the inchworm here, sorry. So if getting absolutely destroyed is going to be 6,000, you want to battle to have it be 5,000. So you want to move that inchworm here, right? So that your worst possible outcome is better than it was before. And there's a couple ways to do that. This, I think, is a really important one. When battling to lose the minimum, I want you to think about the fact that every pot counts regardless of the stakes. So again, we don't care about getting even, and since we don't care about getting even, no pot is too small. So even if we're down $10,000, if there's a $10 pot and it's a good spot to bluff at it, we're going to bluff. We want to win those $10. So a lot of players have this tendency to think of it as like, oh, I'm down 3,000. Like, you can have this $20 pot. What the fuck do I care about $20? I'm down 3K. That's a horrible outlook. Again, We don't care about getting even. All that matters is making good decisions and battling to lose the minimum. So we want to be bluffing into those small pots to win, and we want to be battling blind versus blind and playing as precise as possible. Another thing I see a lot, which I think I never want to see you guys do, and it's not a good outlook, but people have a tendency to, once they've already started losing and once they have a low stack in a cash game, which discussion for another day, but I think you guys should always play the max amount at any game, pretty much no matter what, unless it's uncapped, and then maybe we'll talk about, you know, how much you should be buying in for. But I want you guys to be full. But players have a tendency to, you know, be down to their last $100 and have this idea in their head of just like, well, I only have 100 left, you know, send me home, I might as well lose it, or I'm gonna lose everything I brought, so I might as well gamble with this, or I might as well just go all in, because fuck it, you know, I'm already down however much. Like, I don't want you to think that way. Again, I don't mean to sound repetitive, but just make good decisions, battle to lose the minimum. And if that means, like, you only brought $1,000 and you only have 90 left, I'd rather see you leave with 90 than making an incorrect decision with that $90. And that's really, really important. And it all stems from the mental outlook we have towards money, right? Because since all we care about is losing the minimum, right, making the maximum, and we don't care about getting even, you're going to stop thinking of it in terms of like, oh, I have 100, the only way to get back to 1,000 is by doubling up, whatever, 3 times. Like, we're not doing that. Okay. And it all, some of this stems from just this idea of mental energy. It's not enough, or my point isn't simply that getting even is a wrong outlook. It is, by the way. So is booking a win. It's just straight up a horrible outlook. But not only is it a horrible outlook, it's taking up space in our head and blocking us from being able to think about what's important. So, you know, at any given time, we can only be thinking about so many things. If our mind is on something else, it's going to be hard to play our best, regardless of what it is. But if all we're thinking about is, I'm down 5,000, I'm running like shit, why is it always me? Why does the ace always hit when I have pocket kings? Why does the flush always hit when I have a set? You know, why? How come we ran it twice and I got scooped on? Like, why do I run so bad? It's not just that that's a bad outlook. Not only is it a bad outlook, but it's blocking you from being able to concentrate on making good decisions. Like, you want to be spending all your mental energy on, all right, the UTG player open to 4x. I know that he's a nitty player. What is his range? I'm going to apply that here. Okay, 2 people folded. Middle position, just 3-bet. All right, what kind of player is this? What's his 3-bet range? What do I need to be assessing? All right, what types of hands is the UTG going to call with? What types of hands is he going to 4-bet with? How does that affect my decision on the button? I now have a UTG open. I have a 3-bet middle position. I know I have an idea of both of their ranges because I've just thought of them in my head. I know the type of hands I should expect to see. I'm going to make the correct decision accordingly. Notice at no point in that assessment, obviously then you consider what you have, at no point in that assessment did I ever say or think, I'm also down $4,000, because it doesn't matter, and it is toxic for you to think that way. You need the mental energy, a little typo here. You need the mental energy elsewhere. The place you need the mental energy is to make the correct decisions at poker, which is not always easy. I mean, poker's hard enough without all these things weighing you down, this notion of getting even and booking a win and tilting and all the shit that comes when you let all that stuff affect you. So another thing worth pointing out, I got into this a little bit, is just stop feeling bad for yourself. Like, you're playing fucking poker. Like, you get it. You don't run as bad. You don't run worse than anyone else. We all run bad the same amount. Stop stressing about that. And we're all going to run bad, obviously, over, you know, you could run bad for 500 hours. Who knows? It happens. That's the game we all signed up for. And at some point, you're going to run worse than you ever thought possible. Again, that happens to all of us. But the most important thing is to improve your inchworm, concentrate on getting absolutely destroyed a little bit less, concentrate on playing horrible a little bit less. Maybe even getting to the point where you turn a session where you're playing horrible into a standard session where you say, you know what, Tom, like, I got to the casino. My first 2 hours were brutal. I was wrong on not just was I wrong on every decision, but my decision making wasn't. It didn't even make sense. I'm calling when his range has no bluffs. I'm bluffing in a spot where my opponent never has nothing, and my bluff makes no sense. Whatever your version of well is. I can give you an example for me. I think one of my most common versions of playing poorly is just trying to get water out of a rock, where I'll find myself in spots where I just say, I think I can get this guy to fold, and I just don't want to lose this hand. And then I'll start turning, random spaz shit into bluffs, and it doesn't make sense. The story isn't really there. It just doesn't work. Not just because I'm bluffing too often from a GTO theory, but also just because it's not a good spot for it. It might be someone that's just not going to fold. And then I find myself like, oh man, I'm playing anxious. I'm trying to do too much. So that's definitely something I look out for, which I then need to shift and say, all right, I'm going to inchworm here. I'm going to improve this, and I'm going to fight to lose a little bit less. I'm going to fight to play a little bit better. And I want you guys to be thinking about that as you play. Even if, you're having a standard session, or wherever you think you are on this scale of 1 to 5 during your session, instead of thinking of it in terms of, oh, now I need to play perfect, because you're not going to do that. Some days you're not going to play as well as others. A lot of people call this like A game, B game, C game. I think of it on this scale. Always be trying to improve it a little bit. And it's going to allow you to mentally improve your game. And as that happens, this whole scale is going to be moved up a little bit, so that playing extremely precisely goes farther, and crushing the game goes even farther. Getting absolutely destroyed is going to get smaller and smaller. Playing horrible is going to get smaller and smaller. So, again, I realize I can be a little repetitive about these things, but I think this lesson, or I won't call it a lesson, it's one page, but basically these ideas and the way you want to think about the game, I personally think are just as important as any aspect of learning the game or improving the game. So this is really, really important. If you guys have questions about this, shoot it in the text thread we have, or we can do a private session. Any questions you guys have, let me know, obviously. But I hope you got something out of it. Like I said, it's really important, and I really think the mental side of poker is it's gonna make a huge difference in the long run. So really take this in. All right, guys, have a good one.